She's the best player on the planet. She's been with Nike since she was a teenager. And she still doesn't have her own custom kit, while a 21-year-old who wasn't even ranked in the top 50 a year ago just got a dress designed around her home country's national flower. If that sounds backwards, stay with me, because by the end of this video you'll understand exactly why Nike is making this bet, and what it means for the biggest tournament of the summer that starts in a matter of days. Something is shifting inside the biggest sportswear company in tennis, and almost nobody is talking about it directly, they're talking around it. Fashion outlets are talking about it. Fans are talking about it in comment sections. But nobody has laid out the full timeline until now. So let's lay it out. Before we get into it, if you're new here, this channel is where we track the business and the storylines behind women's tennis before the mainstream tennis press catches up. We called the Eala story early, we're calling this one early too, and if you don't want to miss where it goes next, hit subscribe now, because what happens at the next two tournaments is going to make a lot more sense once you've seen how we got here. Let's start with the number that's driving all of this, 11. At the 2025 US Open, Nike outfitted just 11 of the 64 seeded singles players. Adidas, through its Y3 line, outfitted 15. That's according to Sportico's own count. 3 years earlier, in 2022, Nike had 21 seeded players. Adidas had far fewer. In 3 years, Nike didn't just lose ground, it lost nearly half its seeded roster, while Adidas overtook it for the first time in tennis apparel history. That single stat is the backdrop for everything you're about to hear. Nike isn't just deciding who gets a nice dress. It's trying to figure out who's worth building a decade of marketing around, at the exact moment its grip on the sport is loosening. Now here's where it gets personal, because the player at the center of that shrinking Nike roster is the one wearing the crown. Aryna Sabalenka is the world number 1. She's a multiple Grand Slam champion. She has been a Nike athlete since she made her Grand Slam debut back in 2017. And for most of her career, she has worn what other Nike players wear, off-the-rack silhouettes, not designs built around her. She's said so herself, publicly, more than once. Late last year she said the custom kits she wants might not actually arrive until 2027. Think about that. The best player in the world, telling her own fans to wait 2 more years for the treatment other athletes already get. And it hasn't gone unnoticed by the people who watch this stuff closest, her own fans. When Nike accidentally handed a version of her custom French Open look to a completely different, lower-ranked player earlier this year, the backlash was immediate. Fans flooded her posts pointing out she has as many majors as Naomi Osaka, who does get bespoke pieces every single time. Cut the check, one fan wrote. Give her real customs. That's not manufactured outrage. That's her own fanbase asking Nike a very direct question, what are you doing? So hold that frustration in your head, because now we're going to walk into the story of the player Nike has been building, piece by piece, for the last 12 months, and you'll start to see why the contrast lands the way it does. Rewind to July 2025. Alex Eala withdraws from the Cincinnati Open with a shoulder injury, fresh off an early exit in Montreal. She's 20 years old. She's talented, everyone in tennis knows it, but her season is stalling, and she spends that tournament on her couch instead of on the court. That's the low point. Now watch what Nike does over the following 12 months, because this is the part almost nobody strung together until now. At Wimbledon 2025, ahead of her main draw debut on center court, Nike gives Eala something they've never done for her before, a hair tie, custom-made, featuring the sampaguita, the national flower of the Philippines. It comes in a box lined like a miniature tennis court, with a handwritten note comparing her career to a seed that's finally ready to bloom. Nike later confirms this piece will never be sold. It exists only for her. A few months after that, Vogue Philippines runs a full shoot built entirely around that same idea, Eala in a custom Nike by You tee with the sampaguita stitched into the design, alongside a pinstripe look where her father points out that her signature serve pose echoes the swoosh itself. Around the same period, footage surfaces of Eala walking through Nike's own headquarters in Oregon, past posters of her career highlights already on the walls. This isn't one dress. This is a company quietly building a season-long story around one player, months before she's won anything that would obviously justify it. Then, on August 3 this year, the payoff arrives. Eala walks into the DC Open final against Jessica Pegula, a former world number 3, a US Open finalist, not a player who hands out praise lightly. Rain pushes the final into a second day. Eala loses the first set, then storms back, winning 10 of the last 13 games to close it out 4-6, 6-4, 6-0. Along the way that week, she'd already beaten 3 top 3 seeds. It's her first WTA Tour title, ever. And here's the line that actually matters, not the dramatic one you might have heard elsewhere, but the real one. After the match, Pegula was asked about the crowd, which had been chanting for Eala all week, on American soil, against an American player. Her answer: "It's not fun to play against a crowd like that, but she appreciated the atmosphere." That's it. That's the real quote. It wasn't a warning about Eala's tennis. It was a top 3 player admitting, honestly, that she'd just been outsupported in her own country. Which, if you think about it, might say even more about how fast this player's following is growing than any manufactured rivalry ever could. Within 48 hours of that trophy, previews of Eala's next Nike capsule for the Cincinnati Open were already circulating in fashion press. Not weeks later. 2 days. So let's put the two stories next to each other, because this is the actual contrast, and it's a real one, not an invented one. One player is the reigning world number 1, waiting until 2027 for a kit built around her. The other is a 21-year-old who, 12 months ago, was recovering from an injury on her couch, and is now getting cultural, made-to-order pieces stitched with her home country's national flower, months before Nike has any guarantee she'll win anything at all. You don't need Nike to release a memo explaining that decision. The pattern says it for them. Nike isn't just rewarding rankings anymore. It's betting on where the story, and the audience, is growing fastest. And in Southeast Asia, in the Philippines specifically, that audience is enormous, and largely untapped by any major sportswear brand until now. Now, before we get to what happens next, quick gut check: if you've made it this far, you clearly care where this goes. That's exactly the kind of person this channel is built for. Subscribing costs you nothing, and it means you won't have to go hunting for this story piece by piece across 5 different outlets next time. We'll bring it straight to you the moment it moves. So take 2 seconds and do it now, because the next part of this story is about to get a lot more interesting. Here's why. The Cincinnati Open runs August 7th through the 18th, Sabalenka enters as the defending champion. Eala enters wearing a brand new Nike capsule, in her Cincinnati debut in that design. Same draw. Same tournament. 2 very different stories about to share a court. Then, less than a week after Cincinnati ends, the US Open begins, August 24th through September 7th, the exact stage where Sabalenka has said, publicly, that her long-awaited custom kit might finally show up. The exact stage where Eala, fresh off a maiden title and a viral Nike capsule, will be trying to prove Washington wasn't a one-off. So here's the real question, and I actually want you to answer it in the comments before the draw goes live: does the defending champion defend her Cincinnati title and put this whole narrative to rest? Or does the 21-year-old who was on her couch a year ago keep writing the story Nike's already betting on? Because right now, we genuinely don't know. And that's not a tease, that's the truth. Both outcomes are on the table, and whichever one happens is going to tell us a lot more about where Nike's tennis strategy is actually headed than any dress ever could. Drop your prediction below. Subscribe if you want the Cincinnati breakdown the moment it wraps, because we're following this one, match by match, all the way to Flushing Meadows.